Rising, everybody. Grand Rising, how you doing? It's Coach Renz, and today we're going to talk about the Piso Flavians. Even though we talk about it a little bit throughout other videos, we're going to jump a little bit deeper into it today at the request of one of my viewers. So I look forward to this conversation that we're going to have concerning the Piso Flavor. Of course, I'm gonna give the first 5 minutes or so to let people get on. So when you get on, just let me know where you are, who you are, and that sort of thing. This also gives me time to square up some of my channels on some of the things that's going on. Okay. Share. Okay. Getting my live streams all situated here. I'll get back into that. Oh. All right. We're getting it done. Make sure we get all the right edits in there for the different platforms that we're working on. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. TikTok won't act up. You got time for them. I might go back on TikTok just for the sake of being able to grab videos to use. All right, people coming on. Let me know. What is CJ? How you doing? Grand Rising, CJ. I forgot who kept asking me to talk about this. If they don't show up, there's going to be some problems and consequences up in this joint. What's up, Papa Soul? But we are, said first 5 minutes. Let me get a couple things squared away here. Make sure we're good to go. For this whole deal. I don't want that picture. I mean, we talk about this subject matter to a certain degree. We kind of skip around it. Just add portions of it that, make sense to whatever we're talking about. But we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive. And, I try to, for the majority of my videos, follow a process of teaching and understanding to make sure that, the information is put forth, in a proper way with clear understanding. There's always going to be some level of bias anytime you do any kind of video, because it's going to be my thoughts, my opinions. If you guys are writing something right now, I can't see it because I'm making sure a few things are taken care of. But I'll be there in just a second as I finish these up. All right. So, Grand Rising, Papa, Debbie, I want to know about the good ship Jesus and the other ships that affiliate with religious names before the Africans. We'll see. That's not the subject matter today. But that I have to do some more research on that because I only know a few ships, but Christianity was heavy already. It makes sense to name some ships after them, Christian names that they believed in. But today, since I meant to do this subject matter earlier this week, but wasn't able to, today. I know it's after 5 minutes. I'm sorry, this rather important little document came through. Hmm. Interesting. Okay, sorry about that. Sorry about that. All right, I'll take care of that a little bit later on. Let me take care of a couple things real quick. All right, let's get situated. All right, my good people. What we got? Yeah, there was a ship called the Good Ship Jesus. All right, so we're gonna talk about the Piso family. Now, some of y'all have heard some of this information that I'm talking about. You're going to recall some of it because I've mentioned it to a certain degree as part of other videos about this family. But before we get into the family, first I want to thank everybody for being here and for sharing the videos and channel and whatnot. So um, who are the Piso Flavian family? You have a book legend that they wrote the Gospels. They are theatrical and not historical. Are you saying that you don't believe the book or you believe the book? So this wasn't a question for a long time in Christian history, world history, as far as the Piso Flavians writing the Bible. We just gonna call them the Flavians because that's just the name that's the easiest name to understand. Um, let me rephrase. I normally just call them the Flavians. Okay, you believe the book, not the Bible. Just asking a question. So let me give you guys the backdrop, the historical backdrop. So travel through time with me, if you will, to a time frame where there were no telephones, no internet, no cars, back when Greece and Rome ruled the world, especially during the time of the Grecians. So let me stop talking like this. So basically, back in the time frame, if you go back all the way and start with the Greeks, and this is why, and it's going to become apparent a little bit later as to why the Greeks were important in understanding this process. When the Greeks defeated the Persians and took over Judea, the Levant, they came in, and this was during the time frame of Alexander the Great, or Alexander the Greek. They came in, and the Grecians had a process of Hellenization where they tried to merge their religion with your religion. They wanted you to, in order to keep the peace with the people, they merged the religions, tried to find some kind of synchronicity within your deities and their deities. Um, so you can imagine they're trying to find synchronicities between, and mind you, there's no Jesus at this time. So we're only looking at Yahweh. So they look for that. They look to intermarry with the soldiers to the local women, thereby making the children attached to both the mother and the father. And then as time goes on, the children are completely attached. This is one of the reasons why when we get to New Testament time, the people in that area are speaking Greek because they have been under Greek control for a long time. Now, in this religion, in this situation, the Messianic Jews had an issue. They had a problem with this. And that problem was they didn't like connecting their gods to somebody else's gods. They wanted to keep their things separate. And then what rose up out of that is the Messianic movement of that they must be free from these people, that some Messiah is going to come. So there was a Jewish-Greek war that occurred. And in that war, the Jewish people were able to defeat the Greeks. This is called the Maccabees. The Maccabees families were the primary family that led the Jewish revolt against the Greeks, and they were able to defeat the Greeks to a certain extent, where they controlled certain areas of Judea. Now, mind you, the Jewish groups are spread out all over the known world at the time. They're in Rome, they're in Greece, they're in Egypt, they're a little bit everywhere. So this Messianic movement is very vital and important because you got people all over the place, and it's setting up a stage where you now have a Jewish state sitting in the middle of the Greek Empire, an independent state. So of course the Greeks cannot have this. A little bit later, as the Jewish people are trying to fight the Greeks off and keep them at bay, they enlist the help of the Romans, right? And in enlisting the help of the Romans, Rome is able to conquer this area, take it away from the Greek, and then go and focus on taking Egypt, because Egypt was vital to the survival of any empire during that time frame because of the waterways, the richness of the land, and the connection with the Aksumite Empire and on through Arabia and out into another way to get to India. So it was very important area. And controlling the Levant was very important because controlling that was the roadway, the major trade roadway. Megiddo is fought over so much, or Armageddon as it's called in the Bible, because it is the center point of a major trade route that connects the East and the West. So the Levant was very important. Rome took it. The Maccabees, the Jewish people, thought that, okay, Rome is going to leave us alone, give us our independent state. This was the mindset, but it wasn't so. Rome installed puppet governments, puppet kingdoms. Your Herod, family members are installed. Your Philo family members are installed. So these puppet family members of Hellenistic Jews were being installed into this situation, right? Into this family. Now, once that was put in place, the Romans tried the same thing whether it was under Tiberius or any other Caesar of the Julio-Claudian clan. Because understand, during this time frame, we're looking at the Julio-Claudians are in control of Rome, starting with Julius Caesar in like 136 or something like that. So Julius Caesar, and then Augustus Caesar, you know, Tiberius Caesar, Claudius, Nero, all these different family members under the Julio-Claudian family. They are deemed gods. That's a very important thing we need to understand, that these people were, the Julio-Claudians were deemed gods. They had a royal lineage that descended from um, a god. So they believed, they had the imperial religion, and they believed that they wanted to do the same thing. You want to Hellenize the people, or in this case, Romanize the people, through winning their hearts by having comparative synchronized religions. You want them to become citizens. You try to make things where you can get along with them. One of the problems is that the Caesars were like, look, y'all need to put a statue, since Caesar derives from a god, you need to put a statue of Caesar in your temple, your synagogue, and once a year pay homage to it. Well, even with the Romans in place, that was causing problems with the Jewish people throughout the entire Roman Empire. So as time progressed and this Messianic movement grows and grows over the next 100 so years, it becomes a powder keg. It becomes a situation where there are explosions, there are revolts, there are uprisings throughout the Roman Empire, because you got the Jewish people in this part of Egypt, in that part of Egypt, in Syria, in Jordan, in the Levant, in Rome, all over the place, and they're rioting. They're acting out because the Romans are violating their religion. Now, because the Maccabees have came up and fought only merely a century plus ago, the mindset was, we fight. If we fight, we can win like the Maccabees. Right? Grand Rising Christian, John. So we can fight like the Maccabees. We can win. As a matter of fact, that was Judas Iscariot's problem with Jesus. When Jesus told him that, hey, I'm not that kind of Messiah, he had a problem with that because he was expecting a Maccabean type Messiah, as many Jews were of the day. So you got to have this backstory to really understand this Piso family and the creation of the Bible. Sorry, this feels cricket on me. Then, so they want to win over their hearts, but the Jewish people are just not going for this BS. They just can't. They've had that experience of winning through violence, and so they want to win through violence. They're looking for a kingdom of David again. So they believe that existed once. So they ready to fight. So under Nero, so when we get under Nero, Nero has a general. This general had been sent up with his son, this general was born to a regular family. And this general went up to Britannia, or the British area, the area we know now know as the British Isles, and into what they call Germania and all that. And he was fighting the Druids. And one of the things he recognized, that in order to defeat the Druids, you have to defeat their story. You have to defeat what motivated them. And that's something that is done in warfare consistently, whether it's economic warfare or fighting, physical warfare. You disrupt the person's story. You disrupt whatever motivates them to fight in the way that they're fighting. So Vespasian is successful. He successfully destroys their story. Anytime you see a person walking around with runes, there's no way of validating that those were the ones that they actually have, because all evidence of those runes were destroyed, were gotten rid of. The runes were their magic. It was the way that it emboldened them. So he took their story, he took their heart, and he was able to defeat them, and he kept their heart. So after accomplishing this, well, Nero, of course, says we got to shut down this Jewish revolt. The center point of this is Jerusalem. The whole, well, Judea in itself, but Jerusalem is the primary key, but Judea, because the province was called Judea at the time. So he calls Vespasian. I need you to handle this, buddy. Vespasian starts heading in that direction. Now, understand, Nero was having all kinds of issues. Nero was spending lavishly, having all kind of parties, burnt down Rome. The claim that the Christians, that he blamed it on Christians, there's a certain part where we're going to get to where you can see how that may or may not be true. The burning Christians, yes, as lamps. But the Senate, the population of Rome was getting tired of him. And then the worst thing that a Roman emperor can do is allow for the empire to be thrown into chaos. The empire can never be thrown into chaos. The emperor's primary job is to maintain the empire. So when you have someone who's not maintaining the empire, allowing these rebellions that are happening in Egypt, which is very important for financially and for getting transportation of spices and material in the Levant, in the Anatolia, all these areas, this is not to be steady for it. Can't do it, right? So he has a problem. He has a major problem to deal with. So this Jewish revolt has to be stamped out. It cannot last. It has to go. So Vespasian is called in. When Vespasian comes in, the first battle that they have is this battle. Wait a minute, hold on before I go there. Before Vespasian came, there was an attempt made. A Jewish group went to Rome to negotiate with Nero. One of the members of that Jewish group that went to Rome to negotiate was Josephus ben Matthia. So Josephus was he knew Rome. He understood Rome enough that he was part of the delegation to go. He comes back. Vespasian is on the way. He is also born. Josephus, who was born into a good Roman family, a wealthy aristocratic Palestinian family, Jewish family. He's educated. He's also a general, and he's also a priest. So he understood. He knew all the old books. He knew the Septuagint. He knew all the scrolls that they had at the time. Mind you, the canon wasn't complete yet for the Jewish people, but he was very well read and understood. He knew Isaiah and all these other books, scriptures. Isaiah is going to be important in a little bit. So when Vespasian and Titus comes into town to fight, the first battle that they have is at the Sea of Galilee. And at this battle, he fights against Josephus. So now he's fighting Josephus, and Josephus loses. He loses the battle. Josephus then, when cornered, tell his men that it was supposedly, according to the story, according to Josephus, there was 40 of them. Grand Rising David, there was 40 of them. And Josephus said, whoever draws the smallest straw, they got to kill everybody else, because, suicide was not allowed. But they got to kill everybody else because they refuse to be Roman slaves. And then whoever that last person does have to commit suicide. Well, amazingly, Josephus drops the smallest straw, kills everybody, but does not kill himself, but surrenders to Titus and Vespasian. He's in prison for a little while. He's captured. He's in prison. He's made a slave. And then when a little bit later on, a few years later, he gets an opportunity. He's freed by Vespasian. The reason why he's free, because he tells Vespasian, he can read the tea leaves. He sees which way the wind is going. He understands, because he's been to Rome, he understands what's going on with Nero and the public and senatorial unrest. So he quotes Isaiah to Vespasian, telling him how the next ruler of the world will come out of Judea and tells Vespasian he's that guy. Grand Rising name. Tell Vespasian he's that guy. Vespasian kind of wasn't stupid. He already kind of knew that he would be up for leadership in Rome if they do actually dispose of Nero. So why would Josephus be important to Vespasian at that point? It's all about legitimacy. Josephus and Isaiah becomes important for legitimacy. I'll get to that legitimacy. I just want to finish setting up this whole idea for you so that you can understand. Because for me, the political environment makes a big deal as for why something is created. So Vespasian goes, they're fighting. Around 68, 69, he gets called to Rome. Before he goes to Rome, they tell him, go to Egypt first. Right? Because, the Jewish people are fighting everywhere. Go to Egypt and then come to Rome. We're disposing of Nero. So Nero finally is disposed of. He's no longer Roman emperor. The Julio-Claudian line has ended. And Vespasian is made emperor. Now, he's just not made emperor. It's not like they say, hey, okay, we know that the overwhelming majority of the military will support you. And understand that in Roman politics, right? Without the military support, you cannot be emperor. It's not going to work. Right? So you have to be emperor. I mean, you have to be controlling the military. Vespasian was the most popular general. But the problem is that Vespasian doesn't come from royalty. He doesn't come from aristocracy. So he needs to legitimize himself. And he legitimizes himself in two parts. One, when he's down through the Kemetic Greeks, he legitimizes himself by saying that he healed a blind man and healed a man with an ailment in his hand. And he healed the blind man by spitting in some mud and putting mud on his eyes and telling him to go wash his face. But he healed the blind man and the man with mud through the power of the god Serapis. Right? So this is like him being on a political campaign. This will satisfy the ability to implement him into the imperial kingdom, right? The imperial religion, I should say, the imperial religion, and making himself a god. He has to be deified. So for those people, for the Greeks, for the Greco-Romans and the Kemetics, Serapis was that dude, right? Because Serapis, and many people get this wrong, they think that Serapis was merged with Jesus. There was no Jesus when Serapis was first talked about. Serapis was merged with Osiris, Osiris and Horus merged with the Greek gods, and they made Serapis. It's not Jesus. The Jesus implications come later, but initially it's not Jesus. So he also, now Titus, his son, is doing the Judea thing. He's taking care of Judea. Josephus is his scribe, his translator, that's with Titus as he goes throughout conquering Judea. In 70 AD CE, we know that's when they sacked Jerusalem. You read this, and he sacks Jerusalem. And usually when we're talking about this subject matter, I'm talking about the similarities between the annals of Titus and the Gospels. But in this instance, they still going to correlate, but the main thing here is that Vespasian offers for Josephus to come to Rome. Right? The reason why is because now he needs to legitimize himself by another piece of antiquity. The Roman people loved antiquity. They respected antiquity. They hated the Greeks, but they respected the antiquity of the Greeks. So when he goes to Rome, he needs some more legitimacy. So that same portion of Isaiah saying that the new kingdom of the new ruler of the world will come out of Judea, and that's where Vespasian was pulled from when he was going to be made into the emperor. So it helped to deify Vespasian. It made Vespasian a god with the things he did with Serapis and with the translation of Isaiah. It made him a god. It made Titus the son of God, which is why you're going to see some of your exploits of Titus converted into gospel stories. At the Sea of Galilee, he tells his soldiers to throw spears at the men who were coming off the boats, that he would make them fishers of men, that he uprooted all the fig trees and fruit trees around Jerusalem. He built the watchtower. He entered in Jerusalem with fanfare. He tore down every stone of the temple. So there were these similarities that when you read the Annals of Titus, written by Josephus, they are very similar to what you see in your Bible, in the Gospels that have been attributed to this Jesus character. So now Vespasian is the ruler of Rome, around 70 AD. Vespasian has a few things that he has to handle immediately. The first thing that he has to handle is a smear campaign. Right, Grand Rising going. The first thing is a smear campaign. He has to smear the Julio-Claudians. He has to destroy their name. He had already been known as a person who will backdate information in order to create legitimacy or prophecy for himself, as he did with the Druids. So he had to tear down the previous regime. Now we know this is common. We see our governments do this all the time. Every president, almost every president, can't say every, but almost every president tries to tear down the previous president to some extent, especially if they're coming from, especially when they're coming from different parties. So it's not different. It's no different than that. The biggest difference is the ability of control over life and death that these people had back in those days. We can't think about it how we think today. We can the president order some arbitrary person's death? Yes, but they got to go through some hoops, and there got to be some. There's some things in there. Back then, it was much easier to state and decide what was true and what was not. You didn't have freedom of speech in the same way you have freedom of speech today. You didn't have freedom of movement as much as we do today. There were, it was at just different times. So you can't take your mindset today and implement it into how they thought back then. So don't make that mistake. So when Vespasian backdates things, he can. When he tells other people within his group of the smear campaign, they do it. So the fact that it was known that Nero, they're going to make Nero into the bad guy. They're going to make the Julio-Claudians into the bad people, right? So I want you to have that in mind. You got to make them into the bad people. Now, by making them into the bad people, and the part of that process of making them into the bad people, the vehicle that they chose is going to be what turns out to be Christianity. But before we get there, let's look at how the Romans tried to do it. The Romans tried the exact same thing that the Greeks tried with the Jewish people. Vespasian was going to try the same things. He's going to try to make peace with the people. He's going to try to identify himself Titus as a Messiah. He wants the people to stop the Messianic movement because he recognized he still has that to deal with. Brute force didn't work because there were other Jewish revolts after they conquered Jerusalem in Egypt and other places, you still had Jewish uprising. So it didn't, this brute force didn't work. So let's try their story, like harmonizing with their story. Well, they knew that wasn't going to work from the previous regime. They knew that they were never going to worship a statue of Caesar, that they had this militaristic Messianic movement. So the brilliance that they came up with was a docile version of Christianity, a docile version of Judaism, a version of Judaism that will state and be more inclined to saying it is not a militaristic Messiah that you're looking for, but it is a pacifistic, and that the Messiah has already came. Now, they knew that they couldn't claim themselves at this point to be that Messiah. They knew that they couldn't claim Titus was the Son of God. Titus was Jesus. They knew they couldn't claim that. One, they were still alive, so they couldn't claim it at the time when they first started writing it. So a committee was put together. The primaries of that committee: Vespasian, Titus, Philo of Alexander, and I forget which Herod. I think it might have been Herod Agrippa, one of the member of the Herod family. We got to put this together, and they were all knowing each other. Philo's daughter was supposedly married to the Herod, and she was the concubine of Titus. So they all connected. It was all connected. Y'all knew it. I mean, I brought her up to demonstrate there was an intimate level of connection between these people. Because as Titus gets ready to take over, he's still having this same problem of this fighting. So this gospel needed to be backdated. This writing, understand, Josephus was born in 37 CE. He dies around 100 CE. So between 70 to 90 CE, they got to start these writings, right? This is why when they date these manuscripts, some of the earliest ones always seem to be in and around that time frame. There is nothing that is dated earlier than that. So in this mass campaign, you also have to you can't just write a book of that nature, but you also have to change history. You also have to change history. And what you do to change history is that you get some of your theologians, your historians, to write a different history. So you get your Pliny, you get your Tacitus, Tacitus, to write these histories that are concerning Nero. You say that Nero when he burnt down Rome. Here's the thing: prior to Tacitus writing about it, everybody in Rome, the census was that Nero started the fire. But then here comes Tacitus, 100 years later, saying that no, he blamed he didn't start the fire. But the Christians, he blamed the Christians, right? Well, saying that yes, he started the fire, but he blamed the Christians for doing it. They want to take this new group they're forming, these small groups of people that are all over the kingdom, that everybody will have some type of social contact with. Like, oh, these Jewish people, those are the Christians. He blamed them, and then he lit them on fire. So that, because even the worst oppressive people still don't like the weakest to be picked on, still have some level of that. Most of them, some of them, just like some of them. American, totally different. But there's only so much a person can watch somebody get beat on. you know, uh, innocent people being charged with something and then having these horrific things said about them, that oh they were used as torches to light the streets. I mean, think about that. Burning a human to light the street is dumb. It's not efficient. It wouldn't really work, right? They were all thrown to the lions and thrown to the gladiatorial games and all this kind of thing. Chained up and just fed to the lions. Romans liked fair fights when it came to things that happened in the Colosseums. Even if a slave was thrown, or people who was in jail were thrown into the Colosseum, they at least like to give them a fighting chance. It makes for good theater, right? So you had to get this story. They had to take away Nero's and the Julio Claudian's popularity and make them seem like the worst of the worst. So the Romans made it up. So why does Josephus say there were 4 Yeshuas? Yeshua was a very popular name. And mind you, Josephus does write about the Jewish revolts that was going on. He's writing about what was happening in Judea. And you have 4 different Jesuses that were somewhat political leaders. We already know the Testimonium Flavianus is a forgery. We're going to get to that one. But yeah, he said Rome created WWE. But writing about 4 different Yeshuas doesn't mean that they didn't create it, that Rome didn't create it. And here's the thing. So as they are getting ready to put this story together, what they have to pull on, and their primary source to pull on, is the Herods and mainly Josephus. They are of this rabbinic faith. They know this faith. They know where it needs to be massaged and how the story needs to be written. They know that they have to make sure that this Yeshua character fits the bill, right? That he has to be born in Bethlehem, even though the birth in Bethlehem makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, according to how this book was written, when you compare it to history, right? Joseph's traveling to Bethlehem for a census that didn't happen until possibly 5 years, at the shortest time frame, a year after Herod died. But he was supposedly born in the time of Herod. See, as the book got massaged later on down the line, like any book, you start taking those artistic licenses, right? Or that long game of telephone starts going. And, the story changes as you go. But when Josephus is writing, he knows this Messiah has to fit certain attributes of being, born from a young woman that got mistranslated into virgin, that he has to be born during a certain time frame, and that he's going to have to die, that he has to usher in this new kingdom. And that's the primary thing. You understand, the primary thing that they were concerned about, ushering in a new kingdom. I'm saying that Mark is the oldest book, but after verse 8 in the last chapter of Mark, in the original text, none of that other stuff was found there. That stuff was added later. Long as he dies and is so-called resurrected for this new kingdom, that was a great story. It gave them hope. You see, they were trying to sell the Jewish people hope for a different kingdom, that you can have a little bit of heaven right now. The real kingdom is later. Stop fighting Rome. The book had to be pro-Roman, but not too pro-Roman. Because like I said, the Romans like a good story. Got to have a good story arc to it. So it's going to be pro-Roman in that it says things like give unto Caesar what is Caesar. Whatever government you were born under is the government that this deity that God wanted for you. But so I want you to understand the political reason. So he's writing this in order to trying to shut down the Jewish Messianic movement. It wasn't so much that they were trying to create Christianity, as much as they was trying to shut down the the Jewish Messianic movement, because it was fighting. And what's the emperor's main purpose? Is keep the peace, keep the empire. So if you're going to have this person, this Messiah who actually shows up, but he's telling the people to turn the other cheek, to pay your taxes, to follow government rule, to accept think about it. They're telling them to accept the government that you're under. So don't try to fight the government. Don't fight the government. Don't fight your neighbor. Don't fight when the government slaps shit at you. But pay your taxes and follow the laws, and you'll receive reward in heaven. It's a great story. It's completely different from almost every other patriarchal person in the Jewish religion. In the Jewish religion, at least Abraham, 80 years old, still picking up a sword and fighting. We used to fabricate the Savior's name. The story in Isaiah, Yeshayahu, means Yahweh is a salvation, was used to fabricate the Savior's narrative. Isaiah 7:14 was the metaphor for the Assyrian king who would destroy the three kings of Israel. So Rome did the Jews kind of like America did African Americans with Obama, gave us a hero. That's a good analogy. And I haven't thought about what Takata said. I can't remember that portion exactly, so I'm going to go with what she's saying, what they're saying. Dakota. Are you a guy or a young lady? Because that name can go either way for me. But pretty much, let me give you a hero so you'll stop talking. Malcolm X would be the violent messianic movement. So we're going to give King more props because he's the pacifistic movement. It's the same game. Okay. Just want to make sure. It's the same game. Same game. So that's the plan. So of course he's going to be called, anointed. Being anointed, you have to be a rabbi. So they're going to call him rabbi, even though you got to have a wife to be a rabbi. He had to be anointed. He had to show this promise as a child, because they always have this, in their stories, many of their stories, there's something happening when they're babies, whether they grabbing folks' heels or, things of that nature. There's something going on with them. They go through their stress time, and then it's the whole hero's journey, and then they come out and they do their thing. But unlike David coming out and doing his thing and killing Goliath and then taking over from Paul, unlike Abraham cutting off penis skins and fighting the Sodomites, unlike all these other stories where they went into some type of battle, Yeshua always got to be peaceful. Hey, let's stone this woman. Nah. Whoever is without sin, cast the first stone. I always wondered where the dude was at, but that's a whole nother video. Well, Jesus taught Paul, and Paul said government authority had been given by God. It's not, if not, then it wouldn't be here. as an authority. Well, I think Paul, you see, I did a video yesterday. I posted yesterday. Paul doesn't exist. Paul was made up too. Paul's a made up character, but he's a made up character written by Romans. So he's going to be that guy like that. He's going to usher things in like that. So now I'm saying when I said that, I say that in the meaning that the Romans are going to write that in. So one of the biggest arguments, well, some of the arguments is that it would have been difficult for Rome to have created a religion and people would have followed that religion. Not really. It is not. When you have something that is sanctioned by the government, and if you understand that the Roman roads, one of the main reasons why Rome became what it was, because of their ingenuity. The Roman roads were, allowed for information to travel at speeds that previous cultures of the day weren't able to move information, goods, military. They was able to move story. So to change to add this, to have this story, and then to have care, and then what you do is you have people who tell this story. They implement this story. They start talking about it. Realize that nobody is talking about this story in from 0 to 33, from 0 to 60, 70 AD. Nobody's talking about this story. Nobody is dealing with this. There's no there's plenty of opportunity. I was trying to look up something real quick, even though I completely spelled it wrong. There's nobody to stop this story from growing. Nobody who can say anything about it. You got some of the things that people like to jump to and say, well, Tacitus talked about Christians and how Christians were, right? What he had to deal with. So Tacitus doesn't become political until 81, 82, but under Titus. Titus is the one who gives him, he allows him to become a praetor and allows him to grow, allows him to become this governor over time. I just want to make sure I have the year right, the time frame right. So now, it's when Tacitus starts writing about Christians, he's not writing about Christians, and it's like year 100, year 116 when he's writing about Christians. Who's there to challenge the fact if there were Christians? One, you can't challenge what he's saying at that time frame, because if there's any writings about Jesus or Jesus' character, you can't challenge it. There's no one around to say, hold on, I was in Jerusalem in 33. I don't remember no earthquakes, and there wasn't no Jesus dude walking around doing there was some jokers, but it wasn't that joker. I heard about it. There was a big ass party with a two-piece fish sandwich and everybody ate. I would have been there. I ain't heard about that. You know, you didn't have any of those stories. You had nobody who could counter it. Even when they um, start writing this story in around after 70 A.D. And Josephus wrote a lot. If you've seen the Hamilton play, that song, he's writing and writing like he's running out of time. That's Josephus. That's Josephus. He wrote a lot. Spent most of his time, a lot of his time writing. If I'm writing, and let's say I finished the writing in 75, or well, let's say they take some time to try to figure some other things out, but then we actually do start the writing, we finish it around 80 AD, right? If a person who was an adult in 33, and let's say in 33 AD, you was 20, right? 60 more years pass by, you're 80 years old right now. One, there's not going to be a lot of 80-year-olds. Two, what's the mindset of an 80-year-old? Is an 80-year-old really going to stand up and try to challenge some stuff? Anybody who was old, who was younger than that, can you really trust that memory? I mean, I remember certain, you're going to remember certain major events when you was a teenager, when you was a small, and the younger you go, there are less and less major events that you remember. The younger people, the people who would be in their 70s, their 60s, they're not going to have as big a memory. Now, should they remember something big like that? Sure. But there's so few of you. Who's going to support you? The government is telling you this is what happened. This is not a time like today when I can get on here and you got a vlog, or you can write a book, or you can write some emails. You can communicate with a wide range of people. You can challenge the government in such ways. You have that opportunity. But now we do. And sometimes people like to think about it as if they had that opportunity. And even with everything we got now, we have some charismatic preachers who start changing the doctrine of the Bible to go into dispensation and grace. And then a mass number of Christians in America especially went to dispensation and grace. Then prosperity preaching became a big thing. You have some charismatic people start talking about prosperity. The Bible is about prosperity, and a bunch of people switched with that. You had the groups that took one little part of the Bible and helped to create the Hebrew Israelite. And there's a bunch of Hebrew Israelites out there. Joseph Smith took passages and then added about how Jesus came to the America and created the Mormons. So it's not impossible or improbable to have certain charismatic people go out, start preaching and teaching this message, creating these letters of Paul. Because yes, I agree that the letters of Paul are more than likely written by Josephus, but I think it's a combination of Josephus and Philo of Alexander. Wrote the epistles of Paul, because all those writings that are ascribed to Paul don't fit, and even the apologists are saying that Paul may not have written all of them. Let me see. I don't want to miss too many questions or statements before I keep going. I infiltrated the Black Panther, so I definitely believe the Roman government did some sneaky shit. Yeah. And it's harder to do those things today. So imagine how easy it would have been back then. When you can just come in, I mean, think about it. The Knights Templars, and we're not going to get into that whole conversation, was a very huge banking organization that when the King of France and the Pope said, let's kill him, they just went in. And the people just agreed. The people were liking them on one day, on Friday the 13th, but on Saturday the 14th, they ain't like them no more. That's how powerful the sword can be. I feel that I felt that on Paul, but Levitical law on strangers, foreigners being treated as natives and fellow Israelites under the law and given a covenant under circumcision. Mm-hmm. If Paul was a true Jew who then still converted over Christianity, he still would not have allowed he wouldn't have taught some of the things that he was teaching, right? Since um, the other apostles, according to the stories, and Jesus was still saying that you're still held to the law. If Paul was a true Sanhedrin Jew, he would have still been holding to the law as well. This was a person, Paul made Christianity easy. Easy. All you gotta do is believe in Jesus. That's it. Faith. That's all you need. Would there still be the source? Would still be the source where Paul draws his basis for children of adoption and son of Abraham. Yep. There were many Jewish healers and miracle workers at the time. I watched this rabbi on YouTube that mentioned that came before and after Jesus doing these Jesus things. That is true. There are people claiming to still were performing other miracles after Jesus and claiming to be messiahs. There were many people claiming to be the Messiah. Pretty much all the Yeshuas that Josephus wrote about were claiming to be messiahs. You know, they were trying to keep this messianic movement going. Sorry you couldn't sign up for the class on Tuesday. This is what I'm gonna do for those classes. I'm going to pre-record all 7 classes and make them also available as instructional classes as well. It's not until Peter finds Paul sent from Jesus to preach his gospel, because Paul was saying he was Hebrew of Hebrews, from Benjamin and a former Pharisee. Yeah, I said Sanhedrin. Well, Pharisees are part of the Sanhedrin, right? But I don't even think Paul existed. Paul is a creation as well. Utilizing the back eye, as we discussed. Did I discuss that with y'all, or did I make a separate video? No, we had that as a live. That was a live. Yeah, but Paul is he's made up elements from the back eye were used to create his story, which was a popular story that the Greeks, the Romans would have accepted that story because it was already one of the most popular stories. One of the most popular stories out there. And so to create a new character based on something that's incredibly incredibly popular, it's not an odd thing. Let me give you an example. Because y'all know I'm a comic book guy, right? How many other characters out there resemble Superman and Batman? You right at the same time, because I know you had to start typing that before I said it. Marvel, DC, anime, cartoons. We talk about how we know or talk concepts versus actual history. Yeah, but how many? Most comic books, they branch out from Batman and Superman, right? Sentinel is nothing but Marvel's version of a schizophrenic ass Superman. He is. He's a bipolar. He's a bipolar Superman, because Superman is a very popular character. Batman, a little Black Pantherish, a little Iron Man. It can be based off Batman to a certain degree. But these characters are based off of these 2 main popular characters. You get a lot of other characters based off of those popularity, the most popular characters. Pantheus was a very popular character. So the story is based off of Pantheus and his conversion. He persecuted the worshippers of Dionysus, and then Dionysus blinded him from being able to recognize who he was. And then when he revealed himself, he began to worship Dionysus. He arrests Dionysus in a garden, They were in the garden filled with the Spirit, flaming tongues over their heads, and they are arrested, put in jail, go through the whole back and forth conversations like Jesus and Pilate, and then he's converted over. So elements of the Bacchae finds its way into different parts of the Bible, and definitely the Paul transformation is one of those things that are found in this story. So Paul is most likely a creation. And one of the similar stories that we have there. One of the many stories like we have been taught regarding Paul's conversion. Also remember a lot of comic books, Superman and the lights were created by Jewish cartoonists. Yeah, a lot of them were created by Jewish cartoonists. And as far as other stories that Paul conversions, yeah, you got that. That's the one we talked about yesterday. I cannot remember if that was a live or if I did that as an individual video. It was an individual video. Now that I think about it. So I posted a video about the Bacchae and Paul yesterday on Facebook and YouTube. So go check that video out. But these stories, now they try to argue. Now, one of the reasons why they try to argue that Josephus was talking about a real Jesus, that he was talking about the real Jesus. So they had the testimony Flavianus. This was an interesting thing because nobody spoke of this testimonial until the 5th century, 5th or 6th century. It's like way down the line before you have anybody talking about this thing. And you have to wonder, why did Justin Martyr, Irenaeus, they never said anything about this testimony? Jerome referenced Josephus plenty of time, but he never referenced this testimony of Flavianus, where it says that, and then there was a man if he was a man. There was Yeshua, a man if he was a man. He was a great preacher, a nice guy, and he performed all these miracles, and he was the Christ, and all this sort of thing. Josephus would have never wrote that shit, because even though he became a part of he adopted the Flavians' name, he never went away from being a Jew. He practiced Judaism his entire life. As a matter of fact, he got rid of his first wife because she couldn't get down with him and how he was being a Hellenistic Jew. So then they gave him a second wife, and she was more of a Hellenistic Jew, so he was fine with her. But you're not going to the way it reads, it doesn't fit in. It's like it was jammed into the passage. Like you ever read a book or something, or you try to read something, you read, and then all of a sudden here's this part and it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It didn't fit into the flow. It doesn't fit the linguistic style of Josephus. So most people who study it accept and realize it's a forgery. Even some of these so-called apologists, which actually goes against their pledge because they're supposed to read everything and then make it fit, it's a forgery. So the fact that he talks about multiple Jesuses with different brothers who was under different governors, who had different punishments. Some had no punishment. One of the Jesuses became like a politician. You got the one who flips the tables, but the one who flips the table is not the one. He doesn't get crucified. Matter of fact, none of them gets crucified. Some of them they get whipped, but none of them get crucified. So he's not. These were the basis of creating it, and then with just utilizing the name Yahshua, it's such a common name. It would be like today using the name John. So we got John Williams on here. John Williams, if you try it, he will be hard to find because in most cities, there's probably a couple of hundred John Williams. And I'm sure there's a couple of hundred John Williams. If I were to go into the white pages online, I bet you there's a bunch of damn John Williams. I mean, he compounded the issue with a. So Yahshua, however you want to say it, was an incredibly common name. Joseph, very common name. Mary, very common name. So they're utilizing these common names because it's harder to pinpoint. And plus, who's gonna talk about it? Not all the people who would have something said dead, and most of the people of that day couldn't read. So there's that part. All they could do is go by the stories that you tell them. All the shows are stealing from biblical cosmology now. So the angels, demons, God hierarchy, along with the Father, creation being the source and original light that created the eternal, immortal. Marvel just like the old and new gods of DC. Yeah, and we like repetitive things. Let me tell you the first number one basic human need is consistency. It's consistent. That's why people get excited about a new movie, like I do. I get excited about a new movie. The new Aquaman movie is coming out around Christmas. Go and see it. Hopefully, it's a warm winter day, warm winter night, so we can go to the drive-in and go see it. But it's the same type of story. I already can look at it and know how the story is going to go. I'm not going to be surprised at how the story is going to go. We go and see it to see how well somebody tells the exact same story. And Josephus and Philo, they told a really good story. And then that story was added to. Over the next, over like a 60-year period, these stories are just added to. And then some more people try to add more and more stories. Now, when these other people start adding more and more stories, they start getting a little extra with it, writing it from their perspective, like the Shepherd of Hamas is written from more of a Greek perspective. So you got that. You got the Nag Hammadi writings, which are written from more of a Coptic perspective. And so by the time we get to 300 BC, 300 CE, and you got all these different variations of Christianity out there, the consensus is going to be that Roman consensus. Right? Now, so you got through the reign of Titus, this story is being written, and then as you go into others like Domitian and all them, these stories consistently being, felt up and rolled around and taken apart and put back together, massaged up a little bit here, and they even start going into writings that connecting the Old Testament and changing some of that because you got like the Gospel of Adam and Eve, or the Gospel of Adam, where he's talking about that the serpent was trying to help them and the other guy was evil, and Adam knew that. He passed that information on to Seth, and that helped with corroborating the Coptic story of the demiurge. And when I say Coptic Gnostics, most Gnostics were in the Coptic area. So a lot of people won't accept that this Piso family did this. This Piso Flavianus family actually wrote this book, because by the time we get the problem they thought that they were stopping, all they did was create a new problem, a whole new group, a whole new destabilization of the Roman Empire, which helped make it possible for the Roman Empire to split. And you got the Eastern and Western Roman Empire, and then the empires reunited under Constantine. Because throughout this entire process, you got Christians fighting Christians. You got the Messianic Jews are still out there. And now you got Christians fighting the Messianic Jews as well, arguing, fighting, uproars, riots. And it is not until you get to Constantine and the reunification of the Roman Empire that Constantine is like, look, we're gonna have to make Christianity legal. We're gonna make all religions legal. Uh, we maybe if everybody can practice their own religion their way, then everybody be fine. But then that's not enough. So he then says, okay, we're gonna Christianity is still fighting, so we got to organize this thing. So we organize it under the Roman Orthodoxy, and then he dies, um, and then Theodosius says, you know what, I'm gonna do you one better. We're gonna make everybody in Rome Christian. That way we shut down the whole thing. If everybody is worshiping the same thing, one world government is already established as far as they were concerned. One world religion. If you wanted to say anybody was the Antichrist who would create the one world government and one world religion, for those people perspective at that time, that was the whole world. Theodosius was an Antichrist because he created a one world government and a one world religion. And they had one world currency. So he actually, you know what? I just thought about that like right now. That's a deep dive that I'm gonna have to take. That's a deep dive that I'm gonna have to take. Right. Said Hellenization, what was going on exactly, yes, sir. You have one Jesus who tells his disciples to take a weapon to take a weapon or fight, but then you have Jesus telling them to take weapons and kill those who were his enemies. Yes. It is. I would implore you guys to actually go and either get a book, listen to a lecture, or read the actual transcript of a translation of Josephus' writing, and read it for yourself so that you can see these different Jesuses. Hellenization made Greco-Roman mythology. Hermes Trismegistus, Helios, Dionysius, Zeus. These people do exist in the Mesopotamian Judaic mythology. Yes, they do. Hermes is the Greek messenger. You know why? You know why I'm grabbing that one. Hermes is the Greek messenger of the gods, and he carried the wisdom of the gods. He was a scribe of the gods. Well, so was Thoth. Thoth was the Nubio-Kemetic deity, who was the messenger, who was the wisdom guy, who created shit. Enki is the Mesopotamian guy, who was the same guy, right? Trismegistus, thrice great, 3 times born. So he's been resurrected 3 times, have 3 lives. So they just took Thoth, Enki, smashed it up and make Hermes. So we'll smash it up with Hermes and make Hermes Trismegistus. Greco-Roman gods had ambrosia, immortality formula for the fruit of life. And the Israelite had the manna from bread made from the nectar of the fruit of life that was sustained for a day. And you also have the tree of life of the Sumerian. The Hebrew people didn't come up with the tree of life thing. The Sumerians had that. But you also had the Norse. You got the Norse tree. See, when you say Tahuti, Thoth, Hermes, the reason why I say Enki, Thoth, Hermes, is because Tahuti and Thoth are the same person. Just Thoth was the Greek name. Thoth is a Greek name. Tahuti is the Kemetic name. So they will be the same being. Kind of like how you would say Asar or Osiris. Asar would be the Kemetic name. Osiris is the Greek name. Same with Aset, Isis. Yeah. So that's why I say, that's why it's Enki. Because it's the smash up of the Sumerian, Nubio-Kemetic, and the Greek. So I guess the better way I should have said it would be in Enki, Tahuti, and Hermes. And since We already got one Greek name in there. Why add another one? Right, with translation. Okay, I got you. But yeah, so we a lot. Of course, an apologist is going to disregard all of this because, and most Christians are going to disregard all of this because they have to believe that their book is inspired by God, written by these authors. No. But what they can't explain is the unknown authorship of all these manuscripts that became popularized, especially these four primary gospels that became popularized uh, after around 70 to 80 AD, they start to become popularized. That you can't find any historical accounts of Christians uh, right after Jesus or during the time of Jesus. There's none. There's no historian who wrote about them during that time frame. There's no coinage. There's no pottery. There's no burials. There's no manuscripts. There's nothing. No, not even any piece of evidence before you get into the life of Josephus and Vespasian. Zero evidence of it. I forgot when they say the earliest gospel. Let me look it up real quick. I know it's Mark, but and it was just a little scrap of paper. And the Q source, they really don't know. And they say that it was probably written between 66 AD to 110. But to try to date something, to say 66 to 110, something can easily be during, at a later date. Just because they're dating Mark between 66 and 70 doesn't mean it could not have been 75 or 80 or 90. And then they're dating Matthew and Luke 85 to 90 and John 90 to 110. And of course, they date them in those order based on how they seem to pull from one another. But those first writings could have easily been anywhere during that time frame. And notice all of them do fit in the lifetime time frame of Josephus Flavianus. You're proving the myth of Babylon. You're proving the myth of Babylon and the confusion of language. You are sharing the same deity from different cultures. They did a lot of Hellenization. Didn't just happen with the Greeks. Hellenization also happened with a lot of these people. Uh, the Shashu god of Yahweh and the the Hebrew god of El were merged together. The Canaanite god, and then they were merged together with the Canaanite god of Yahweh. El merged with the Sumerian Enlil. They had artwork from 66 to 90. What artwork? But even to have artwork during that time frame is somebody's perspective of writing. If you're going to create something, you have to start manufacturing data. As we discussed, the Vespasian was very good at manufacturing data. Matter of fact, one of the things that he ordered a copy of the Septuagint to be brought to him and then burned, and then ordered all other copies of the Septuagint to be burned. This is why you get your Dead Sea Scrolls, because the Essenes were trying to hide their versions with the books that they had. All these cultures, they share the same stories, they just change the names to fit their narrative. So the Vatican controls the world. They definitely have a powerful influence on the world. Uh, it would be hard. They had more control back in the day than they have now, and the Vatican may have all those versions because it said that the Vespasian kept a copy of the Septuagint in his own personal library, and he would keep copies of when he destroyed the Druids. He would keep a copy of their story in his library. Was it burned and destroyed in one of the three burnings of Rome after him? No, two burnings of Rome after him. I think it was two or three burnings of Rome after him. Possibly. But is it possibly stored in the Vatican? That's possible as well. It's funny to me how people talk about a secret societies, but they seem to leave out the Vatican all the time. The Vatican, I ain't gonna say people. There are some people who talk about the secrecy of the Vatican, so let me not say it that way. But they have more secrets. They probably have more secrets than any other organization on the planet. The giant Bible that's bigger than a man. I don't recall seeing that at the Vatican Library and at the Vatican. I don't recall it. You're trying to get me to remember some things from damn near 30 years ago. I see you can go online and buy this giant Bible that's about as big as a man. You talking about the fact you can buy a Bible that's as big as a man? Because I was gonna say I didn't see nothing like that when I was in the Vatican. They found it in a rundown church. Okay. Oh, they recovered one. Let me better this search. Oh, I see. I see pictures. I don't know if there's an article. I got to do a better search. That search is just bringing up a whole bunch of giants that are found in the Bible. I'll check that out. But I'm sure that that's why I said yesterday. I don't want people to have. I don't condone warfare, but lucky I wasn't leading troops in Italy when we got to the Vatican, because I would expose all that shit. I would expose all that during World War II. Hercules is a Hellenized Samson. Um, were you on here when we talked about Samson? What was that, Monday? Because that's exactly one of the primary people I compare Samson to. He was baptized Roman Catholic early 40s. I know how they manipulate the Bible and brainwash. Yes. When you have an organization that is promoting the Bible but says that they are an authority over the Bible, that's like an interesting thing. It all boils down to the intersection of paleo contact and human expectation. All this stuff is historical myth, a grand illusion, mind control, and distraction from realizing our own true purpose. Exactly. This is why I also do videos and lives about understanding yourself. Uh, Even though I have detractors who will come on like, you're just trying to tear it away. You don't give people their own path. You don't watch my videos. You have seen one video and now you think you understand and know what I'm talking about. Not Samson per se, but the 12 laborers. Oh no, check out the video on Monday. Samson and Hercules or Hercules, they share some qualities. They share some other qualities as well. Uh, just like, Hercules. See, this is when you're creating these new characters, it's to go back to comic books again. When they're creating a new character, it's not uncommon to take parts from multiple characters and make a new one. And then when you make another character, you still may take some of the parts from these other characters. It's like all of them got super strength. All of them got super durability to different degrees. All of them go through these heroes' journeys of somebody got to die. Like their mother dies or their father dies. Most of the time, their father dies. And that they go through this trauma and they come out and be a hero for the people. They struggle having a private life, when they make these different characters. Yeah. And Hercules was a little freaky too. He used to get down with the women, and got with a woman that was not of his tribe. And that exactly, I was just about to say that, which you can go back into look at Gilgamesh, and Gilgamesh would be in somewhat Sumerian, but also a more Akkadian person. But these stories are all being told over and over again. If all these people who claim to be Messiah types today, they are the same. They follow the same pattern. And all of them complain the government is going to come against us because the government came against Jesus. There's always has to be this impending major force that comes against us. I never heard of them finding a mummy of Gilgamesh. I have to look that up. I didn't know they claimed that they found the mummy of Gilgamesh. Would that be possible? Let me think. I'm trying to think. I don't recall the Akkadians and Sumerians doing a lot of mummification. So that would be interesting if they found. I mean, I know that the Chinese did mummification. Of course, the Kemetic did mummification. The Sudanese, the Nubians, they did some mummification. You do have some the Mesoamericans, especially in the Aztecs, Mayans, Incas did some mummification. So it wasn't like it's impossible. So I check it out. And if he was 8 foot, that's a big dude. And yes, this rabbit hole goes deep when you're searching. The hardest part of when you're going in the rabbit hole is trying to decipher what's true, what's not, what's made up stories, what's not. This is why I would never be a specialist and just focus on one thing or one group or one area, because when you do that, you isolate your mind to start accepting things as truth that may not be truth, because you can find the pattern of, is this a common story that everybody been telling? Okay, but where's the truth part of this common story? You know, and what's the fantasy and what's actually real? What's practical out? The biggest truths, if I had to pick, if they said, okay, you can only follow one thing, it would be Hermetic alchemy. That's it. That is the one truth, because I can identify it in how the universe functions. All these stories that attribute this person, that person, all the fantasy, can't do it. If Zeus is Marduk and Marduk is the son of El and becomes Ra, the sun, both, then that's Israel for the entire region of the old world, Africa, Europe, Mesopotamia. The only part about that combination is I can see how I would I can see how Zeus and Enlil, because El would, when you put Marduk in there, El is more Enlil, Inky, but Marduk is Inky's son, not Enlil's son. That would be the only part. But those stories you talking about, the Sumerian, Akkadian, Assyrian, Babylonian story that was told over like 5,000, well, about 7,000 years. So there's a lot of changes that can happen. But I see what you're saying though, with the Israel, Isis, Ra, and El. That still covers a large group of a large area, because you can still put Zeus. Zeus can still get in the mix when you look at El from just a primary deity, creator god that still has kids, when he had his wife Asherah, which would be Hera. Yep, the sunboat covers a bunch of people. Shit, the sunboat, you can take that all the way over into the Mesoamerican teachings as well, and into the Australian teaching, the Aboriginal teachings. Preserved by they showed. But ISIS is definitely, they worship the shit out of ISIS. Paris is named after ISIS. Par-ISIS. And right where the Louvre is built on top of a ancient Isis temple. No, I didn't see that Mexico revealed their alien. I don't get a chance to watch a lot of television or news. Hold on, let me check that one. Let me refresh my memory on that one real quick. Ooh, about time for some new contacts. Because I remember Dagon or Dogon from the Sumerian Dogon. Yeah, I know Dagon, the weather god in the Sumerian. I don't know of a Dagon or Dogon who was a African god. I mean, Dogon and Poseidon being put together, sure, because he was like this fish god, this water god. But as far as him being an African god, I don't. Maybe you're thinking about the Dogon tribe. Like my father's family is from the Dogon tribe in Mali, but that's not in relation to them. But you know what? Now that I think about it, okay, so the tribe was Dogon, but the serpent fish looking beings were called the Nomos, but they were worshipped by a tribe of Dogons in Mali. This guy's in contact. It's moving around. And I was going to say that about the whole Israel. You got to be careful of some of these people, some of this linguistic stuff that people do today. They'll take it into a modern concept. I've never really thought that Israel equaled Isis, Ra, and El. It's kind of like when people say God in reverse is dog, so you worshiping a dog. It's like it's more of that's a modern kind of thing. It's popular to say Israel. I like that, and actually, that's how when I have trouble spelling Israel, that's how I have to say it in order to spell it. But there's really not enough evidence to show that the Hebrew people worship Isis at any point in time. That they worship Asherah as their female deity. And right, the post fish miter is what they wore in the worship of Dagon, but Dagon was a Mesopotamian god. Zeus and Poseidon were in Africa. There are deities that are similar to Zeus and Poseidon out of Africa. But you got to think about it. All these people had water gods, lightning gods. Y'all hold on for 1 second. I just want to answer this phone call real quick. Hey man, I'm on the live. What's going on? Yeah, what's up? Yeah, some of these people on here. The only reason I answered this because some of the people on this live were probably interested in knowing that you was on here. So I want you to just say hey to the people real quick. Hold on. Can y'all see that name? All right. Go on, say hey to the people.
Peace, everybody. I hope y'all doing amazing. I was just calling my buddy Lorenzo to chat a bit, so I'll have maybe back when he's doing. I hope y'all have a good deal.
All right, man. I'll call you back.
All right, brother.
All right, later.
Peace.
Peace. Some of y'all find that interesting. Right, Dogon is the tribe, not Dagon. Dagon was the fish god in the Mesopotamian uh, area. Queen of Heaven could have been multiple women as Yahweh succeeded El and his wife. Yeah, and then it gets pushed into just being a spirit. But remember, it was after the Babylonian captivity when they said, "No, we're gonna have to get rid." That's when they got rid of Asherah. Yeah, I knew Debbie, you would appreciate that. Willie, you follow him too? That's my guy. Uh, I did. Oh, he has agreed that we're gonna do a show together, but it's been a while. He's they trying to. Lacey's pregnant, so and the baby they don't want to take the baby premature, so they're trying to get her to like a certain number of weeks. It's probably gonna be premature no matter what, but trying to at least get her to a certain number of weeks first. But we talked about that a couple last week, and I was telling y'all, send some good energy their way. Isis is the Greek translation of a set. Yep. So that could not make sense with L, right? Because then L would have to be Asar, not Ra. It would be Osiris. Ra was Osiris's mom. I mean, dad. No, it doesn't work. Asherah and Artemis and Athena, Asherah and Astarte. And some of those, it'll be like, this is the Mesopotamian, this is the Sumerian name, this is the Akkadian name, or this is the Assyrian name, or Babylonian name. So Hellenization wasn't brand new. Other people people did this automatically. Anyway, when they lived close to other groups, they would share deities and share story. Their stories of their deities will be shared, I should say, making, taking each other's stories and making them their own. The Romans took the Greek deities and made them their own deities. I know I'm gonna get them wrong. I'm gonna tell you, when I used to sit and read the encyclopedias, I knew the flips by heart for the Romans and the Greeks of who the people were. Like Hermes is Mercury, and they were based on planets. So Hermes was Mercury. Some of them I knew the ones that was based on planets, especially Hermes was Mercury. Pluto is Hades. Neptune is Poseidon. Earth is Hera. Venus is Aphrodite, I think. Mars is Aries. Shit. Jupiter, Saturn, and Uranus. Those are the last ones. One of them got to be Zeus. I think Jupiter is Zeus, because Jupiter was always their like primary big god. Saturn, shit, I can't think of who Saturn and Uranus were. I appreciate you acknowledging that your attendance, Norman. Actually, comments help the algorithm, y'all. Just to let y'all know, comments do help the algorithm. So at least say, "Hey, how you doing? I'm here." It's gonna bother me all day if I don't figure out Saturn, who Saturn and Uranus were. Zeus is Jupiter. Poseidon, Neptune. Okay, Hades, Pluto. Hera. Oh, Hera is Juno. I thought Hera was Earth. So Hera was Juno. Where are my other planets? Where are my other planets? I want my planets. Aphrodite, Venus, Hermes, Mercury. Aries, Mars. Oh, Kronos. I should have known. Kronos is Saturn. Zeus' daddy. Kronos is Saturn. I knew that. I knew that. Helios is the sun. Where's Uranus? Or Uranus? Right. I knew that Artemis and Diana are also the moon. But you also had Selene, Luna, and Luna is well, Selene and Luna is the primary moon. But Diana, one of her province was the moon as well. Let me go back to y'all. Maybe one of y'all have already now told me. All right, Saturn was Kronos. Yeah. But who was Uranus? We got all the planets and bodies, but we don't have Uranus. Oh, Callias was the Roman name, indicates that he was the Roman counterpart to the Greek god. Oh, Uranus is the Greek god, and Callias is the Roman name. All right, got it, got it, got it. All right. And yeah, the other Greek name is Uranus. Uranus. So the Uranus is Greek, and Uranus are the same. Then you have oh, y'all, I figured out what this so I did say something, please don't advertise for other channels and all that kind of stuff for Twitch, but I was doing that wrong. I understand what Twitch does now. Um, they give you credit for if you're on Twitch to go visit other channels and follow other channels, and that's like some kind of credit thing. I'm learning about how Twitch works, so I don't know. That's not. I don't think that's the same person as the other one. It's called raids, but I'm not paying for something. Okay, so I have to turn that off for them to not advertise it like that, but other people try to get you to go and join other channels. But we're gonna fix that. Triton is based on. I think Triton was one of the moons um, of Neptune. Gaia. Gaia is Earth. Thank you. I should have known that one. I like that channel. But Terramata is a Roman god for Earth as well, goddess. Gaia is the Greek. For earth and sky. Um, yeah, I think that is correct about Uranus did represent sky and Gaia represents earth. And that would be similar to Jeb and Newt, sky and earth. And then the daughter Shu had to come in and separate them. What's up, Donald? How you doing, Grand Rising? I do have to warn you guys at 1 o'clock. Well, between 1 and 1:30, I have a hard stop. I have to run. I have to run an errand. It's not really an errand. Just got to set something up for tonight. Are any of you guys in Atlanta? Just curious. But just in that little that sequence we just went through, we see when you're doing because that started from the statement of going down a rabbit hole. You see how we all went down that rabbit hole? And you know how far we can go down? You know how far we can go down that rabbit hole? Because then we can draw comparisons to the Aztecs and Mayans and the Aboriginals in Australia, and we can get into comparing Ifa and how they compare, like how Shango and Thor are the same damn, pretty much the same deity, but you got people who didn't have contact with each other, with the Norse and the people of West Africa, but they have this same breakdown. This same breakdown of this Father God, the Son. The Son is a thunderer. You got the Father God, Odin. You got Odamare. You got the mothers of Frigga and Oshun. You got the water goddess of Mama Wata. Who's a half fish. In some descriptions, she's a mermaid, basically. These people didn't have contact with each other, but created that same structure. Will you ever get into Atlantis? Man, I talked about Atlantis, but yes, I do realize that even some of the matters that I talked about before, that because people come in new and you might have missed stuff, we will go through them over and over again, every so often. I was telling Angelina, I should, like my most popular video on YouTube, I could do that one again because I haven't done it in 8-9 years. Because my thing is I did it once, but I realized things gotta be done most time. But that would be a good one about all the sunken places. So Atlantis, the continent of Mu, yeah, I know Mu, how it goes from Japan, Hawaii, and the Easter Island, Marshall Islands. They all had pyramids under the ocean. And then you gotta also add to that one, you have to add Lemuria as well, which would be in the Indian Ocean. And yeah, migration of people does help to spread these myths, spread these stories. They connect and they go through that. We call it Hellenization because we have a Western culture for the most part, but people were doing this long before then. Yeah. Oh, all the elements on Earth, whatever they saw in the sky, natural events, they all got deified to high and low levels. They all get deified. Then great people who thought was great, they get legendized into demigods. Defrosted Antarctica. It's in the process of defrosting. It's not going to be good for people in certain areas when it defrosts. If it was to go through a massive, like, if we had like some massive solar activity and the Arctic and Antarctic melt. Whoo! Mm-hmm. What a time it will be. Now, that pyramid in Antarctica, the one they're claiming is a pyramid in Antarctica. Of course, some are claiming that it's a mountain. It's just a mountain. But we're not letting people go look at it. And when I say we, I mean the government. Yep, got to anthropomorphize it. Got to make these deities more like us. Then just give them certain attributes of other animals that are common to them. Buzz Aldrin said, I didn't see that. Buzz Aldrin said they defrosted some things they shouldn't have. I didn't see that one. Hey, man, I like them. When I, because my kids mother loved Christmas. So, of course, I participated with the whole thing. Them polar bears drinking Coca-Cola, one of my favorite ornaments. Oh, it just came out? Okay. But yeah, and I like that they added that in the, because y'all know how I like my movies. And they added that in the Alien versus Predator with the whole pyramid being under the Antarctica. And that's when they, the thing went haywire and they had to blow it all up. I like how they add these things that are possibilities into these movies. In some regard, it's just great fantasy. In other regards, it's let me get you ready for something. Let me tell y'all some stuff that's really going on and getting y'all prepared for when we actually say it, you already have some familiar basis. Antarctica used to be green at one point. So there is a very high possibility that there was some type of civilization there. Coke ain't gonna do that. Say he wouldn't talk about the moon landing. I would imagine he wouldn't talk about that anymore, though. I mean, because you got look at how many times he had people come at him about trying to get him to say the moon landing was fake. He wound up punching that one guy who just kept, and that guy just kept harassing him. I mean, he kept going from event to event to event, harassing him about it. And then he finally just got tired of that joke and punched him, which is kind of sad. Because if an old man punch and knock me out, I'm not showing my face no more. That's embarrassing. If a 30-year-old man punched me and knocked me out, that's one thing. I could like, man, I'm 51, he's 30. I can use that as an excuse. But that dude looked like he about 20-something, 30, maybe early 30. He got knocked down. He got one shot by old ass Buzz Aldrin. I don't know. The moon landing. Oh Lord, do I really want to get into that? We talked about it before, and I think it's possible that we can go to the moon. I think we've been there. I think we've sent some shit there. Here we go, Diane. I have a cousin, my cousin Bernard. Me and him used to debate like champs over the moon landing. Way back from when did he first start? We first started debating that in '94. And we used to go at it. Shit, I would call him up just to see if you still think the moon landing fake? Just to start an argument with him. Isn't the moon made of plasma? There's nothing indicating that thus far. Now, I think the moon could possibly be hollow, which could make it so. Is it a diet? Is it a diosphere? Uh, is it a constructed item? It could be hollow. And there are stories, mythologies about when the moon came into our atmosphere. So it could be hollow. I could possibly get down on that, but I think we went. Do you think the mythology used in the past or during the ancient world as an esoteric or allegorical way to describe the world or cosmos and not to be taken literally like some people do nowadays? I think the higher conscious people throughout history have recognized that, yeah, these things are taken literally by the masses are going to take them literally. But we can see laws of the universe and esoteric ideas within those things, that they are also there to present an opportunity for us to understand the nature of ourselves. Like I can look at the science of moon phases, right? And then I can look at the esoteric idea of moon phases. Right? And I was just telling Angelina this the other day. The moon is always, there's always a full moon in respect of the moon's presence and its effect on the earth. How it's lit up in the sky is only relative to its positioning. But wherever it's positioned, it's still having the same cause and effect on the planet, whether you can see all the reflections or not. Right? Does it cause issues? Do people act a fool during full moons? I think part of that is the psychosis that's been taught of people, that people have conditioned themselves to think that. But that positioning of the moon raising, if the moon raises and lowers the water level on the planet as it moves in different positions, and you're 80%, 70 to 80% water, it would move the water levels within you as well. So those water levels would have could possibly have a chemical effect and an emotional and psychological effect within yourself, within each person. So the science of it is that it's always a full moon. Esoterically, you can take those full moons to understand your mentality and also the behavior of the earth and its timings. Planters don't plant until after the first full moon in the spring equinox. That's when you start planting. And then you harvest, like in the fall after a full moon. You got to finish your harvesting before the full moon ends. Sorry, like that. I'm trying to remember, I haven't thought about that planting and good 15. Well, when was I fake farming? I was fake farming. I stopped my fake farming around 2002. The moon is reflecting extracontinent outside our explored world. Willie, are you a flat earther? The moon's not reflecting, but the moon's not reflecting that. I will say the moon is a weird object in the sky. It doesn't act like any other body that we can visibly see. What is fake farming? Oh, I was growing sunflowers, grapes. I had a little garden. I was fake farming. I was doing some stuff. And so because I was fake farming, I was like looking at all right, I had my farmer's almanac, and I had my pappy with me. He's a farmer, and he grew up a farmer. And I was like, okay, even though he worked at Lockheed for a long time, I was like, okay, this is when I plant this and plant that, and got plant based on the moon phases because it's really telling me the season of planting. Yeah, I was fake farming like a champ. Fake farming like a champ. Squirrels make me stop farming. I had about 30 sunflowers. It was all lined up on the fence line. My yard was looking real good when they was all lined up and about 8 feet tall and hanging over. And I won yard of the month that month. Looking good. Came home one day, them goddamn squirrels. I was gonna harvest my thing on crop like the next day. Came home, damn squirrels. And I took all my sunflower seeds except my sunflowers except 3 little bastards. And then one of them was hanging on the lanai, and this squirrel got into the lanai, jumped from the screen, grabbed it from the middle of the room where it was hanging, fell down, knocked himself out for a minute, got up and ran off with a big sunflower out of his mouth. I was just like, man, you can have that one. You took a knockout for it. Yep, after them squirrels, they used to attack my grapes, and I had to spray this pepper-like spray on them. Goddamn squirrels. Starting a new group called the Cape Earthers. The ideology of Earth being made of cake. Skylark's stupid. Oh, you're a family farmer, but you never heard of fake farming. Yeah, that's just, I make up terminologies for myself. That joke, Skylark, Skylark's got a problem, y'all. He be coming up with some weird stuff. He's probably funny as hell to be around. But yeah, the moon though is weird. Every other body that we visibly see has a rotation. You realize the moon is the only thing that doesn't rotate, because I don't believe in flat Earth. So, but the moon don't rotate. It's facing us the same direction the whole time. They say that the soil on the outside of the moon is older than the soil on the inside, which would indicate some kind of mining. The only time we've seen that is when we participate in mining, and the older, the soil is thrown on top. The older soil is thrown on top of the new soil, because that would go against like the moon being created like all other planets, where there's bombardments, and then there's this gelling of togetherness until it gets to a point where it's a body. Because I don't think that some deity said, poof, there's the moon. Poof, there's Saturn. But the moon is always facing the same direction. It's always facing the same direction. Never turns. And the Chinese reported that they found some cube-like structure on the moon. And I think the Russians reported that they found some tower on the moon. And then it's in perfect position between the Earth and the sun to create an eclipse. Nobody else, no other planet in our solar system got that going on. But it's perfect. And it's the perfect distance in comparison to is it the radius or the diameter of the Earth? Or something like that. There's some weird stuff about the moon. That's why when that movie Moonfall came out, I was like, I gotta watch it. The moon is literally artificial because its size, shape, rotational distance from the Earth, and the distance related to the Earth and the sun are nearly impossible. Exactly. But something's failing on it. If it is fictional, man-made, it's failing because I remember some years ago, they were saying that the moon is moving away from the Earth at like 3 meters a year or something like that. Right. It rang like a bell. Come on, look, Willie, you can't be a flat earther and talk about it. Well, I guess you could say that it rang like a bell because for you, the moon is within our atmosphere. It's not as far away. But it did ring like a bell when they dropped 2 vehicles on it, and it rang, and it just rang. And you got to have hollow chambers in order to ring. Yeah. And it's just too perfect to be where it's set up. So I think it's something. It's a funky little body out there. It's different. It's different than everything else. So that's a whole big, that's a 3-4 hour discussion right there. to get into like the actual breakdowns of each one and everything that happens, everything that we think we know so far. All right, and we've never been able to, like Diana just said, we've never been able to successfully dig on the moon. You know, you get to a layer and that's it, and maybe it is made out of titanium. I don't know, but we can't get in there, and we never go to the dark side. We don't go to the dark side, even though they say they went around it. NASA always like they lose contact when they go around the dark side of the moon. And you can say, okay, well, they can't penetrate it, the radio waves and all that kind of stuff, and there are no satellites to bounce signals off. But if they were going there so many times, why wouldn't they, as they getting ready to go on the backside, before they drop a little satellite, so that while they're on the backside, they can still communicate. Drop another satellite so that it can bounce, that line of sight is still there, bounce another one, and then drop another satellite. Why wouldn't they have dropped satellites so that they can maintain communication for safety's sake? Just for safety's sake, if you got some vehicles going around it. Right? We do that with the Earth. You know, we got satellites all over the place so we can communicate everywhere. You know, like when I was an IT guy, it's another reason why I don't do flat Earth. When I was an IT guy, when you're dealing with transmission of packages through satellite, when you transmitting information through satellites, you have to have those bounce points. You know, in order to transmute something from America to, say, China. There's no firmament. And that whole theory was designed to discredit conspiracy theories and make us look foolish. I can discredit flat with you 100% of the times right now. The camera, balloon, space. And that's was ready for forthcoming snake, which that was. Okay, so all those things, just trying to digest them. You confused me a little bit, Trismegistus, in your statement. Because when you go look at those balloons, and I think that's about curvature of the Earth, but even those balloons aren't high enough to get a big enough viewpoint to be able to see the curvature. Because when you think about the size of the Earth, even when I was on ship out on the water, you don't see a curvature. You know, you kind of do, but kind of don't. And they say it's a trick of the eyes. But the main thing is watching a ship go away, and it doesn't just shrink smaller; it dips. You know, once it starts getting about 10 miles out from your vantage point, it starts dipping. It doesn't like get smaller and smaller, and you still see the whole ship. The ship looks like it's sinking into the water. That would be because of a curvature, not if it was flat. If it was flat, it just would get smaller, but you see the whole ship. Oh, so they've sent some above the stratosphere? Okay, I haven't seen some going above the stratosphere. NASA equals not a space agency. Christian being fun. I'm gonna have to check out some of those beyond the stratosphere. I didn't know that they sent some beyond the stratosphere. But the whole flat Earth thing, I can't get down with that. And most of the demonstrations of it, I'm like, come on, man. You ain't proving nothing. You just prove that you're on Earth and how things work on Earth. you ain't really proved that the earth is flat. But the moon thing though, now I do think we've been there, but I don't see. Uh, I don't. I'm not sure the moon is a naturally occurring thing. And then you got stories from the Greek and stories from the Zulu who did not have contact with each other, and both of them are talking about when the moon came into our orbit. What do you think was the real purpose of the mummification for the Egyptian pharaohs and ancient Egypt? Because I know it had nothing to do with zombies. No, it didn't have anything to do with zombies. From my understanding, most of the time the mummification was done because people, just like our Christians have the idea that you're going to resurrect your body, it was a resurrection of your body. So they had to preserve your body for this resurrection when you go into the field of reeds. That's all. That's been my understanding of it. I've never really heard or thought about or talked about any other purpose for it other than that. They intentionally distort information to make it seem like one thing. But if you know anything about the physics or you're smart, it's very easy to see the flaws in their logic. Oh, quite easy to see the flaws in the logic of a flat earth. Uh, I love when people think they're so smart and they have a balloon and they pour water on it, or they have a globe and they spinning it and they put water on it. I'm like, come on, man. There's this thing called an atmosphere. You have to be able to reproduce an atmosphere in order for that to work, in order for you to truly demonstrate it. And then I just saw this guy, he had some water on some lines, and I was like, yeah, but you're manipulating how water works in vacuums and pressure and everything when you're raising and dropping, raising the water on one side of the tube and dropping it. You tell people that you know what we live on. What do we live on, man? Tell us what we live on. We live on the back of a turtle. They were attempting to leave organs to clone themselves for later, in my opinion, but didn't plan on the Europeans and invaders eating them. I never heard about them eating them, but they want to be cloned. That would be some shit. You know what? You can actually run with that theory. You can run with that theory. If you think about the fact that uh, if you ran with the Sumerian teaching that they had to kill one of the Anunnaki and they utilized his genome in order to clone the first what 15, 16 iterations of man based on the Anunnaki story. So you can run a thing that they thought that they will figure out how the ancient gods created man through cloning, and that one day we will be able to do it, and then they will be able to be brought back to life. You could run with that. You could run with that. We live on a flat earth and it's spun. The things on the edge of the earth would exert far more centrifugal force than the things in the center. That would be true if it was a top, uh, which would spin in place. Literally, things on the edge of the earth is a flat earth would fling off the edge of the earth. Yep, you need something to hold it together if it was a spinning top. Otherwise, and then everything, and there will be a point, there'll be a pressure point. If I'm thinking about it correctly, there'll be a pressure point where things on the things closest to the middle will be drawn in, and things on the outside would be flung out, and then there'd be this happy medium point within there of balanced pressure, if I'm thinking about that correctly. But if we was on a flat Earth, the hardest part is gravity. One of the hard things is gravity. But they say gravity don't exist. So what's holding us down? It's not what science previously hit over generations. Coach better than Chat GPT. Is that's that AI thing that people was telling me about a month ago? I believe. Oh, Valentino, thank you for speaking. How long you been here, Valentino? If you've been here for a while and you just now speaking when I said everybody say hello who ain't spoke, I'm gonna have to come find you and fight you. Mass and density. Isn't that gravity? These things like these people reincarnate into their own bodies. Some which will shit y'all typing too bad. Purpose of the mummification process. Yeah, there was. I don't know who asked me about the mummification process, but yeah, I went to this whole cloning thing because somebody said that it will be a clone. Yeah, don't make me come fight you, Valentino. We need them comments. They help the algorithm. At least say, but yeah, from my understanding of the Egyptian belief, they thought that they needed their bodies to when they resurrect into the field of reeds. So they mummified the bodies. And they thought the soul was in the heart and the brain. They just threw that shit away. They thought your car was there. I just recently heard about the prison planet theory and that we are all disruptive little spirit soul beings from another planet, and they put us here to see if we would get our act together, and the moon is an observation tower to see if we acting right, because that's when I heard about the Russians. I think it's the Russians, might be wrong, found that there's two towers on the moon. But yes, science is the best method for understanding the world and the universe. That's why I look at science, and then I just take the esoteric look at um, the hermetic laws and alchemy, which does work with science. I don't even know what you were. Are you saying that we're on the top? We're spinning on a flat Earth? Because I'm curious. I don't know much about the Saturn Moon Matrix. No, I'm doing a live, so I didn't go and look at a YouTube video. Science is just a state of knowing. The ones published today have been incorrect. And the beauty of science is science always questions everything. And science will question their own facts. And that's why I like peer review. Like if one scientist does something, if they know that in order to validate it, you got to get other scientists, especially those who go against you, to follow the process and see if they can validate it or invalidate it. And you got to get multiple peer reviews. to be able to substantiate your claim. Like, oh, you're talking to Chris. Because, like with the flat earthers, science keeps disproving it, keeps showing them that no, the earth is not flat. Their science, what they claim to be science, it hardly ever works. The moon thing, still a lot out about that one. One is not easy to really figure out the moon unless we go back. But one of the main reasons I think that we don't go back to the moon, haven't been back to the moon, is because what's the benefit? What's the benefit of it? Are you sure you're not part of Buku Mandalia? Dala? What is that, Norman? I know you told me before, but I can't remember. But I wouldn't be surprised if we were a penal colony. The whole planet was a damn penal colony. I would not be surprised because human behavior is jacked up. What logic does it make that we're gonna make enough bombs to kill ourselves and kill the planet? The closest I get to the simulation is that we exist in the mind of the all. Everything in existence is a conscious thought because thoughts are energy, and energy can be, at some level, energy can be formed into matter. There's a book called Who Built the Moon? It goes into the Sumerian lore. Okay, all right. Who built the moon? Angelina, write that down. I know you ain't left work yet. I've yet to see Jupiter Ascending. I know I love my movies, but that's a movie I haven't seen that I wanted to see, Jupiter Ascending. So now I'm gonna have to watch it. Shit, I just watched Prometheus. What was it, like 2 weeks ago? Sun moon matrix is a theory in which the planet Saturn is transmuting a frequency through the moon and creating a manipulated virtual reality. I have to look up. I haven't heard of that one. Prison planet. Maybe that's why no one can go to Antarctica or the ice walls. The only logical reason, and this is just me. The only logical reason I can understand that we don't allow anybody to go to Antarctica is not to preserve the natural aspect of it or nothing like that. The Nazis were going there back and forth during the World War II and then come back with all these weapons. I know that I was brokenhearted when I found out that all the stuff that I thought I knew about Admiral Byrd was made up shit. But you had some Nazi, and even some of the Nazi people, books and stuff was made up stuff. But is that where whatever civilization that was here prior to the Younger Dryas, is that where they retreated to? Did they find some, not a whole hollow earth, but some cavernous area that they could sustain and live? And they just manipulate the world from that point. Are there some pre-Younger Dryas civilizations living there, and that's why we don't go there? But that is also why we see all these different, UFOs and stuff. And they're really just coming from these inner Earth civilizations. Not that they're living in the core, and the Earth is hollow. But I can't fathom why. What is it? 7? I think it was 7 back in the day, but I think it's 9 or 10 countries now that regulate where you you're not going in Antarctica. Um, but that's why they don't want me to be president. So I'd be like, I'm telling it all. We're gonna tell it all. So that's where Star Lord came from. Skywalker is stupid. But I like there should be nothing hidden. I don't believe in keeping things hidden. I don't like things being hidden. I'll play the game and try to get involved in things so that I can find out as much as I can, but I don't really like the idea of things being hidden. I think people can handle it. People in today's world can handle it. Yeah, and I don't think the earth is hollow, but there are some immense cave systems. And if the world was being in either situation of the world being destroyed, the interior of the earth, some massive cave system is going to be one of the safest places to be. What are my thoughts? Saturn being the first sun? I disagree with that. I mean, ancient civilizations may have thought that, but I don't think that they. I'm gonna go with the scientists that our star was created, and then all the other planets our star created was made created through science, and then all the other planets were created around it. But the Saturn being the first sun, I think that's just giving credence to their idea of Saturn being Chronos and how Chronos, because I think Anu represents Saturn as well, and out of Chronos came the gods, birthed out the gods, and you get all the other planets. I think CERN is a great scientific facility. Got to get that nuclear fission, get some of that blue energy going. Bhuman. Where that Earth is a bowl. Is that what these maps are? These some flat Earth bowl maps. Mm. Oh shit! What I hit? And I had to look at this for a while to see all the information on it, but it looks weird and it looks interesting as a thought. But there are a whole bunch of different variations of it. Yeah, James, as with usual, we talked about the subject for about a good hour, 2 hours, and now we're on to whatever comes up by some migration of one question that leads to a whole nother subject. And satellite imagery, okay, I know you're talking to Tristan gets this. Shows images of that are miles away that should have been curved around the planet. Um, I mean, you do know how satellite imaging is like mapping. Like you take a picture here, then you take a picture here. So it's like grid mapping. And then you put enough pictures side by side and you get a full scope of what it looks like, even if you're going around a ball. So, like, um, if I have a satellite here and I take pictures as I go around, I can get an image of the whole thing. And things can be whatever the distance is between each symbol. I can show the distance between each symbol by just mapping around it. That's what how satellite mapping works. It's not like you take a shot and you see the whole flat thing. You can take a picture of a ball and then lay it out flat to see what the holes, everything around it in the circumference looks like. The Egyptians referred to the sun as Ra, and Ra has an eye similar to the eye of Saturn. Saturn doesn't have an eye. That's Jupiter that has an eye. And it has that big. You talking about that big red storm that goes around Jupiter? That's Jupiter has an eye on it. But the eye was more a reference to the fact that the Egyptians, they understood the pineal gland and the third eye, so to speak. Now, when you shoot a laser across long distance, it doesn't go straight; it bends because of atmospheric pressures. It's going to bend. But I'm not gonna get into y'all flat Earth discussion. I'm gonna let y'all have y'all flat Earth, round Earth discussion. I'm gonna let y'all have that. I'm gonna step out of that one. So the eye of Ra and then the eye of Horus is more talking about your third eye. But yeah, Jupiter has Saturn doesn't have an eye on it, as far as I remember. I could be wrong, but this is why I like Dr. Google. Dr. Google is great. Okay, I'll type in. Yeah, Jupiter has the big eye that goes around it. And they say this storm is like bigger than the Earth. Can you imagine a storm bigger than the whole planet? That's like to give you the idea of the size of Jupiter. But every picture that I'm seeing of Saturn, there's no eye, like storm structure on Saturn. That's on Jupiter. But we know that's a big ass storm that's just traveling around the planet. And yeah, but there was a group that believed that there was a time frame where there was a group, a nation, a tribe that thought that Saturn was a star. Saturn previews may have been more visible to the naked eye, though, and to a went through a waning phase. And you can barely see it, and it showed coming back to the horizon. Oh yeah, man! Back in the day, I would literally want to time travel simply to look at the sky. Like, can you imagine seeing the sky about 15, 20,000 years ago, um, without all the light pollution, without all the other air pollutions that we got? Um, like, now that I know, me and Angelina drove to North Carolina and we get to this one part, man, we had to pull over because we got to this one part where it was, when I tell you, it was no light pollution at all. And maybe being close enough to the coast, there wasn't as much pollution. And you even our air pollutions that we put in there, you could see. I mean, we saw like 3 shooting stars when we was out there, and you can see how they thought and called it the Milky Way because it was that massive cluster of stars and gases was like right there, and I mean, you can see some shit. I don't know how they was able to pick out some of these. Um, these signs in the skies, these shapes, because there were just so many stars. So I would love to go back. Angelina, are you on your way? So I can get myself together. I know you got a quick turnaround. Um, I gotta take her back to work so we can go on a date tonight. Going to the High Museum for jazz night at the High. But yeah, I would love to have seen what the sky looked like 10, 20,000 years ago. Hell, I even take 5,000 years ago. That would be amazing. Simply amazing. Say I'm vlogging now. Yeah, I think on Twitch this is called just chatting. Learn about this Twitch thing. Since I'm gonna open up a new TikTok today though. TikTok is a good source of making videos. Well, making the short form videos. I still have my long form that I make. But to keep that Facebook algorithm going the way I need it to go, I need to keep putting out like 4 to 6 videos a day. But yeah, that's some good stuff. That's some good stuff. You know what? In preparation for Angelina showing up, and then I know I gotta run right out the door, and I don't want to. Well, she gotta come in and figure out what she's gonna wear though. First, I'm gonna have a few minutes when she first get here, actually. But yeah, it would be awesome to see. Have you guys ever been somewhere where you can see the sky, truly see the sky? Like, I simply want to go. One of the main reasons I want to go back to Vegas is so that I can go out into the desert and see the sky. We showed a woman. So Stephen Ballmer had a video showing a woman showing a video where it looked like there were 2 suns or stars, and one at a closer distance and another one at a further distance. I can try to look that up. But I don't think there's ever been another sun in our solar system. Uh, that Saturn or Jupiter was never a sun. The time frame that they were just before the planets settled, there were no humans here. There were no humans on this planet um, when they would have been more like balls of molten lava kind of deal. And then they will be they're so far away that would we actually get enough heat and radiation from them? Virgin Island, maybe because I spent most of my time in Charlotte Amelia and over at Megan's Bay and Red Rock. I don't the sky wasn't like as grand because Charlotte Amelia got a lot of lights. So did Red Rock. Now, maybe if I'd have stayed at Megan's Bay longer into the night, I would have been able to see it. But I left like in the first part of darkness. Or maybe if I would have went to the north side of the island at night. Right. Outer Banks of North Carolina. That's kind of what we was in between when you get off 95 before you get to Wilmington. When you're on, what's that, 74, 76? There's a portion in there. It's brilliant. Brilliant. Yep. And we spent the night on the beach at Wrightsville Beach. And although she was asleep most of the time, you literally see this. I was sitting there and you could see the spin. You can see the tracking of the stars here, and then it's over there, and it's over there, and it's over there, and it's over there. And it's all moving that east to southeast to west direction. Beautiful. Oh, we're gonna do a whole moon show next week, Valentino. We're gonna talk about this weird ass moon. We're gonna do that. We're gonna talk about the reflections. We're gonna talk about the fact that it don't move, it don't spin, all that stuff. The towers, the cube, the fact that every crater on the moon is the same freaking depth. I didn't say that earlier, but every crater, that doesn't make sense at all. If I fire my 9 mil into some sand, it's gonna make a different depth, and now there are different sizes of craters, which it shows different impact sizes. If I fire my 9 mil into the sand, but then fire a 50 cal or AR-15 into the sand, the depths are going to be different. So why does the moon, all moon craters have the same depth? Unless all the impacts are hitting and there's a shell that it doesn't penetrate. Gotta be something to that. It's got to be something to it. That don't make sense. And we know the moon got impact craters, a whole bunch of them. Don't make sense. It's something to it. Exactly. You gotta be out of shell. Hold on for a second. Open these blinds. That's how I know when Angelina rolls up. It's got to be an outer shell. Has to be. That's the only thing that makes sense. So though it's things like that make me lean, not all the way there, but lean towards a hollow moon. Lean towards it being a possible, creation of some other beings. And the ancient stories about the moon coming into our orbit. That's where they get the whole mist story from. Like they're saying that the Earth used to be just a mist. And if the Earth was a mist like that, without waves and currents in the same way we have them now, then would that be possibly would that explain why Antarctica could have been green? Or even just continental drift could explain why Antarctica used to be green, though, because of the continental drift. If it drifted from a more equatorial area down to the poles, that would explain that situation as well. Why that used to be green, but then of course the more it drifted, the colder it became, the more inhospitable it became, and the people would have to leave. Excuse me, and people would have to leave at that point. So we gonna get into that. That's probably going to be our Monday conversation. Is talking about the moon and all this freakiness. I do want to get some conversations about because I started to do. I had originally planned today to talk about alchemy, chakras, hermetics. I had planned to talk about that today, but I remember I said that I was going to do the Piso thing, and I remember that I was originally going to do that on like Wednesday, but I forgot. So we're gonna moon it up on Monday. Tuesday is our What's Wrong with the Bible. So maybe Wednesday we talk about chakras, alchemy, hermetics. Randy, if you really want to get into all that stuff, Randy, we talked about that in the first 2 hours. Rome has always wanted to rule the world. Jesus is the way. We are following the way. Not followers of Rome. It's all in the Bible story. I do, no kingdom thinks it's ever going to end. No kingdom ever thinks is going to end. So Rome thought that it was going to rule forever. And Theodosius thought that, hey, I got Rome under one currency, one rule, one religion. That's another discussion or a short video. Well, maybe a 7, 8 minute, 10-minute video about how Theodosius actually fits more of an antichrist picture than Nero or some coming antichrist. But definitely, I think there's enough evidence for me that Christianity was a Roman manufactured religion in order to try to stabilize the Roman government, make the people more passive, and just those who were originally just those who were in revolt, being the Messianic Jews, and trying to calm them down. And the most viable people who would have been able to write that at that time frame would have been Philo, Josephus as the primary, and then throw in a little Herod and whatever other people they would have brought in at the time frame to get those stories manufactured. And it was really originally geared towards those Messianic Jews. It's the same way they try to do with Islam. You got the heretical, not heretical. Well, it is heretical actually, but you got the heretical, radical is what word that I was actually looking for. You got the radical extremists in Islam. So you got certain countries like Turkey. Turkey appoints the imams for Islam in order to control what the people believe. And the same thing with Iran, did the same thing, but just more the radicals took over. We tried brute force. Brute force doesn't work. So they tried winning over the hearts of the people. But the primary, St. Jerome later, but the primary methodology that seems to work better is to change the religion. You change the religion, you take out those things that radicalizes the people, and you can make them more subservient or bring them into a level of synchronicity with the rest of the world or with your perspective of the world. And then you can stop them from, you can have balance and peace, and more importantly, you can have control over those people. You can see that in Islam today. So there wouldn't be much of a difference in seeing that exact same thing in how the Romans tried to do it, right? The only difference is we should be able to do it better, Because if you look at Islam today compared to just in our lifetime, in my lifetime, Islamic teachings today are more subdued than Islamic teachings back in the 80s. You know, in the 80s, it was hardcore. You had a lot more radicalism going on in Islam than you do today. And one of those ways is immigration, allowing Muslims to immigrate to these Western countries, allowing them to participate in politics. It kind of gives the feel of there's a peaceful way that we can coexist instead of we got to fight these people. Oh, William is trying to touch the subject. See, William, that's what got me banned, got my account banned on TikTok. When I do open up a new TikTok, and I will not be going live on TikTok because they made me mad with that bullshit. They banned my thing. You know how many videos I made that are sitting there that I now don't have access to? Bullshit. So I got to make a new, so you get banned all the time. But no, I don't believe in this God, this deity, these books. But I also don't believe in the primary LBG. And I have to say primary now because I've come to the understanding that there are groups of LGBTQ that fights against this primary agenda of the LGBTQ. You know, to me, they're just as bad as like Hebrew Israelites who try to force their agenda on Black people. They're trying to force their agenda on all people. When you're trying to force this idea that, and you know what, now we can have a straight up conversation about that since I'm not dealing with them ones, but not dealing with TikTok in that way. The trying to force it where these children can make surgical decisions about their bodies, that's some bullshit. Oh, and no, I can't upload the part 2 of Gospel Thomas from there. So what I have to do, there's a downloader I can get for Facebook that'll allow me to download the Facebook version. So I have to do that now for that Gospel Thomas part 2. But, you know, I have a daughter who claims she's binary. And she likes men, but she claims she's binary in her persona. It doesn't necessarily agree with me. But I told her, and I'm not going to be one of those parents that, oh, I'm against this, I'm against this. Oh, now it's affecting my family, so now I'm with it. You know, no, I ain't that. I'm not Ronald Reagan's wife. You know, I'm not Nancy Reagan. I'm not doing that. But, you know, when I had that honest conversation with my daughter, I was like, look, I'll do my best to respect your little pronoun thing. I'm not going to be perfect. Because in my mind, you always going to be my baby girl. I don't care how you say it. So that they and this, days and all that stuff, nah. You know, I'll try. Do I agree with your politics? Some of them, yes. Some of the other ones, no. Hell no. No, not going to do it. Can I look at you and say you've always been that way? Hell no. You may say it, but no, you have not. I watched you. So we're not going to agree on that. The only thing I was very adamant about is do not change your body. You know, because you change your body, and I know you're saying you don't want to have a child right now, but you don't know what you're going to be thinking when you're 30. You know, but that their agenda is trying to push it so that she changes now. Whatever she thinks about now, that's what she should do. I'm like, hell no. So we did come to that agreement. You know, now of course, ultimately she can do whatever she want to do. You know, I can't force her to do or not do anything. But and she's that little joker may wind up watching these because she is the most one that thinks like I think as far as this kind of stuff is concerned. their agendas, they're them that trying to force their stuff. And I don't know why they trying to be Christian. Like, why? You should be one of the least groups that's Christian. My son's ex-girlfriend said she was bi. I asked her, where do you see yourself in 10 years from now? And they broke up. And I don't care if people are attracted to other people, want to sexually experiment with same gender. You know, as a guy, I ain't ever sexually experimenting with another dude. You know, in the form that me and another dude is doing stuff together. I'm touching this joker. Hell no. Or them touching me. We're not doing that. But if a dude across the street was doing that in his house, you go do that in your house. That's in your house, man. Have fun. You know, make it do what it do. Stop trying to force everybody else. Don't make me say I have to accept it. Yeah, that's my part. I don't have to accept it. Cleaning up the kids being able to make choices on sex eventually, which leads to pedos. We definitely can't be like, and you shouldn't. Like, a child's brain is not mature enough to make some of these life-changing decisions. You know, when they have sex, who they have sex with. They're not ready for that. And most of the time they just look, my first sexual experience was not because I wanted to have sex. It was because I had an older brother and an older sister. My mom was working 2 jobs. So there were plenty of time for, we had it. My sister would invite her friends over. My brother would invite his friends over. I think they're only like 2 years apart, and they would be in there, you know, grinding and doing stuff. And I'm like 3.5 years younger than my brother. So I was like, I want to touch somebody because that's what they was doing. So my first sexual experience was just copying what I saw my brothers and sisters, what I saw them doing. You know, because let's see, which they were still too young. Because my older sister would have been like 12, 13. My brother would have been 9, about 10, 11. And so I was 6. So I just saw what they was doing. So I was like, I want to touch somebody. I want to grab a breast. I want to grab a butt. You know, I'm just copying. Do what thou wilt, but harm none. Exactly. So I didn't really know what I was doing and sexual, as far as sex or what it was truly, until I was like 12. Is when I had a better understanding of it. And then, even then, I just had a better understanding. You just grinding. But it was a couple, a bit more than grind. But, and then you have that first ejaculation. Ooh, boy, I got addicted to that. But I can say I truly, truly, truly didn't have my first true sexual experience until I was 14. A lot, yeah. And I've seen that, Marcus. A lot of these transgender kids are regretting that transition. You know, if they become adults. And you do have parents who are influencing these children. And it's almost like it's a fad to do so. You got to slow that shit down. You know, and I don't understand why there's a whole agenda to push it into children. It's like they're recruiting and trying to get them caught up early. Well, I mean, that is how you recruit. You get them while they're young and very, very impressionable. You know, hell, I grew up with 2 cousins. My primary two that I grew up with were cousins, female. And if I wanted to play, I had to play what they was playing. They had Barbie, so I played Ken, especially when they got the Barbie car. Ken had to drive that car. It was on a string though, but I had to drive that car. You know, I played with Ken. Ken was my dude. But then I was like, later on, I was like, nah, I got some G.I. Joes. Barbie finna date goddamn G.I. Joe. He ain't dating Ken. So, but you got parents today they'll take a little boy who's playing with dolls with his cousins, won't recognize that, well, if the two primary people he played with are girls, this is what they're playing with. He's playing with the dude toy. He's always the guy, but they'll push that into them having some kind of that they want to be gay. Like, I knew there was these two twins. I told you guys about this before. These two twins that I grew up with, they were a couple years older than me, but I grew up knowing them. The mother wanted a daughter and was kind of upset that she had two twin boys. So she used to dress one of the boys as a girl from birth. You knew which direction that joker was going to wind up going. She kept him in the house. She let the other one go out and play sports and do all the other stupid stuff that we did. Sliding down hills into ditches. But she made the other one stay in the house, play with an easy bake oven, play with dolls. She dressed him. She put him in dresses, put big pigtails in his head. You know which direction he was going to go because you forced it. You conditioned that little boy to think that he was a girl. And I'm not saying all these parents do that, but there's enough. No parent should do it. But the fact that there's a group of grown-ass people pushing that agenda, that's worse. That makes all of them worse. But yeah, I want to get to, let me stop. We're going to save that for next week. See how we do? Valentino, you come in here, you change the whole goddamn conversation. But Angelina's on her way home, so let me get signed out of this and take all this stuff down and get ready to run her back to work. So I appreciate you guys. Now y'all good. That's how we do it. We start out with a subject and then it goes wherever it goes. As long as we get the main subject thoroughly worked through in the first 2 hours, I'm good with the subject matter changing. So y'all have a great day. I will most likely not be doing a live over the weekend. So definitely on Monday. Be back on Monday. I put out a whole bunch of videos over the weekend and today. So definitely go check out my video I did yesterday on the back eye and what it's called. It's called Paul Never Existed. Paul Never Existed. It's only on Facebook and YouTube. So go check those out. Preferably on Facebook, but check those out. And watch the video, like and share everything. Like and share this video. I appreciate you guys liking and sharing all the videos. As with every day, thank you. Yeah, Norman, I enjoyed it as well. I thank everybody for their shares and everything that they contribute to the channel. So y'all have a great day, and always remember that you got to free yourself to be yourself because your greatness is non-negotiable. Yeah, when you watch that video, I completely screw up the way I end my videos with that one. I screwed it up royally. But y'all go have a great day and good journey, good vibrations, and I'll see you in video this weekend. I'll see you live by Monday. If I do get bored and Angelina's doing a project, then I'll probably come live. That's the only time I come live on weekends, if she's involved in some project because she's a project lady. Yeah, so y'all have a great